That's my dog.
Okay, let's see if I can do it now. There we go. Maybe it's because I was in that other room. It was still on over there or something. I don't know.
Go ahead and start.
Yes, go ahead, start.
Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to the TCUSD School Board Candidate Panel. I would like to first thank those watching on Facebook and YouTube, and I would also like to thank our 4 lovely candidates for coming out tonight. My name is Audrey Yoshimura. I am a junior and staff writer on TCHS Rampage, and I will be one of your moderators for tonight. Hello, my name is Kaylin. I am a senior at TCHS. I've been on Rampage for the past 2 years, and I'm the newsletter.
I can't see all the pictures yet.
Today we are gathered on Zoom with our running candidates to ask them questions generated by the Temple City community. And now I will allow the school board candidates to introduce themselves. So I think we can just go around and everyone will have about 2 minutes to give a little intro about themselves and talk about why you're here tonight. And whoever wants to start first can go.
I'll start. My name is Kenneth Nolenberg, and I'm running for re-election on the school board. I've been on the school board probably about 15 more years. And I think I bring a background for the school and the school board that none of the others except Mr. Smith has. And I enjoy the phone conversations, the distance learning a little bit, not too much. I still think that teachers are important in the classroom to answer questions people have right away. And everything's going to be okay, I'm sure, sooner or later, probably later than we expect. But little by little, it's starting to gel, and the pandemic is being controlled by the state and the federal government, which is kind of strange in a sense. And I've lived in Temple City most of my life. Thank you.
I'll go next. Good evening, everybody. Fellow candidates, good evening, and to the school community, good evening. Thank you, Rampage, for coordinating this event and inviting me to attend. I'm thankful for the opportunity. A little bit about myself. I'm a 15-year resident of the community. I have 2 kids that currently attend TCUSD schools. I've been actively involved in PTA, serving 2 terms as PTA president at Emperor, and I've held other board positions at PTA, and currently I'm on PTA council as a historian. I've also served on the high school site council, and I've served as a board member of the Temple City Schools Foundation. So a couple years ago, I realized how important it was to be engaged with what was going on at board meetings and how what goes on there impacts directly the kids' educational experience, our kids' educational experience. And from that day forward, I attended board meetings regularly and I learned a lot. Then the board seat became available and I felt I had a valuable perspective to contribute. And that led me to apply for the appointed seat opening. I was really honored to be given the opportunity to serve, and I've taken that role very seriously. So I hope tonight that you'll learn a little bit more about me, what I believe I have to contribute, and some of the issues I think that are priorities, some accomplishments, and most importantly, my commitment and care for the success of every student. So thank you.
I'll go. Go ahead. Okay. Hi, my name is Matt Smith, and my wife and I have been 38-year residents of this community. All 3 of our sons attended kindergarten through high school and graduated from TCHS. We have all been advocates and models for community involvement and share your desire that all students have access to a high quality, well-rounded education in a pleasant and safe community. It is incumbent upon all of us to work together and build trust with our community and our district, including the parents, administration, employee groups, and our city partners. In the interest of time, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about my awards and activities in our community, but if you visit my campaign website at matt4tcusd.com, that's MATT, the number 4, tcusd.com, you'll find out more about that information and other things I have listed there. I would, however, like to share my family is a family of educators and education advocates. In addition to my 17 years in the school board, my oldest son, Kyle, teaches music in the district, and my wife formerly taught both in Monrovia Unified and San Marino Unified School Districts. In addition, my middle son, Carrie, now works in our district office, having previously served as both the guidance counselor and athletic director at the high school. Lastly, one of my daughters-in-law works in the field of education, having taught for 6 years, including a 2-year position in the projects in Chicago. And now she's working for a curriculum developer called Code Ninjas, who most people have probably heard of. As a district, we have now implemented a new distance learning one-on-one computer education delivery program that will continue to provide the same high quality of education to our students that you have come to expect. Considerable time, effort, and resources have been deployed to implement this program. And that said, we are looking forward to returning to a more traditional classroom as soon as can be safely done for our employees and our students. I'd like to thank you for your time tonight and your interest in tonight's forum. I trust you'll be pleased with what I and some of the other candidates have to say tonight. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Mary Sneed, and I'm very proud to be a candidate for the Temple City Unified Schools Board of Education. First, I would like to thank and congratulate our student leaders from Rampage for hosting our forum tonight. I was very blessed to spend half my life as part of this district. As an elementary teacher for 25 years, as a classified employee, as a parent, and as a volunteer, I feel I will bring a unique perspective to the board and to the issues facing the district. This district gave me the opportunity to enjoy a profession I loved. And I still feel I have so much more to give back to the district and the students. My husband and I are proud of the fact that our 3 sons are all Temple City High School graduates. I was raised to give back to the community. As such, I volunteered with the Camellia Festival for over 20 years. I've been a part of Relay for Life of Temple City since its beginning. And my husband and I were proud band boosters. I am currently first vice president of the Women's Club of Temple City and the museum director for the Historical Society of Temple City. They say that once you have a student, they're always your kids. And I keep that in mind. And as a board member, I want to continue to advocate for all of our students and their families. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your wonderful answers. Now we're going to go into our first question, which is basically just 2 minutes of you telling us a little bit about yourself and why exactly you want to be a member of the school board. And we could just go in the same order as the first introduction.
Hey, my name is Kenneth Lowenberg again. I've lived in the Temple City area in the same house for about 77 years. I ran for school board because of the high school had a problem with subscriptions to magazines because they were going to individuals. And I enjoy sitting on the school board each and every day. I enjoy the innovation that the superintendent and all the people who work for her and all the teachers and all the parents have come together to help us as a school board to be able to help solve all the problems that are approaching us. Thank you.
So why do I want to be a board member? I think, as I said, I feel like I have a valuable perspective to offer and to contribute to the discussions that take place at the board. I also feel like my care and the stake that I have in this school community is another thing that drives me to want to be a board member. Now, that kind of gets into why I think I'm qualified. I'm not sure if that is going to be another question, but I'll just jump into some of the things that I think makes me have this valuable perspective that I talk about. One is, being a parent, a current parent of kids attending TCUSD schools. I can experience the district from the parent's perspective. And I talk to many parents in all the activities I'm involved in. So I think that bringing that to the table is important. My educational background is I have a bachelor's from USF in business administration, and I have 22 years of business leadership experience and HR experience that has been really valuable in a lot of our discussions at the board level. I also understand the business of education because in my day job, I work for Los Angeles Unified School District. So I completely understand that aspect of it, which is important. And then I've been trained. I took the master's in governance class that helps me understand the governance and what's good governance. And so I feel like that has kind of laid the foundation for being a good and trusted steward for our community.
Okay, I'll go again, I guess. I previously served 15 years on the school board. I was on the board from 1998 through 2013. And at that time, I thought I was done. But a couple years ago, a little bit of pandemonium hit our district ahead of the pandemic. We had a superintendent that was let go. We had two superintendents that we brought on, and two board members that were being subject to recall. And it just seemed like things were in disarray. So at that point, I decided I would jump back in and get involved again. So I ran for the remaining 2 years on a 4-year seat. There were 2 years left, and was gratefully elected by the community to help out. So I have a lot of experience. I think one of the issues back in 2 years ago were one of trust and transparency. And I think we've worked through that. We have a good board now. We hired a new superintendent. She's done an excellent job. I'm very pleased with her. We've made some changes to the way we do things in the district to help support our people. And there's always something that comes up that's interesting that you don't expect. And I enjoy it from that perspective, probably more than anything else. So anyway, I like I said, bottom line, I don't want to repeat what I said in my opening statement, but I do have a lot of experience and background in being on the school board, and I think I can continue to bring some good guidance, and that's it.
My background is from the classroom perspective. I started as a parent volunteer, and then I was a classified employee for 5 years in the district. And actually that experience as a classified employee changed my whole life's path. My Bachelor of Fine Arts is actually in graphic design. Once I started working in schools, I discovered how much I enjoyed working with students. And I actually went back at the age of 40 to get my credential. I went back later to get my master's as a reading specialist. That was in 2001. I think what I bring to the district is that what I can bring to the board is that I have a unique background of being not only classified and certificated, but I've also been a parent and a volunteer. I've seen how district policies affect those on the front lines, those in the trenches. In some cases, I might have agreed with them, and in other cases, I might not have agreed with them. And I felt I was able to speak my mind at the board meetings, and I appreciated that. But when I retired 2 years ago, I felt like I did take time to enjoy my retirement, but I also felt, and I still feel, that I still have a lot to give back to the district. And I would like the opportunity to be able uh, to continue to work for the students and the families in this district.
Thank you for your answers. For the second question, do you believe the district should renovate the 400 to 500 buildings? and also add an auditorium for the performing arts.
Can you just
Can you
clarify?
repeat the question, please?
Do you believe the district should renovate the 400 to 500 buildings and add an auditorium?
Can you just clarify on the high school? I was at an elementary school. Can you just clarify which part is the 400 and 500 building? Is that the one that's on Temple City Boulevard, the old building?
Yes.
Okay.
Are we going in the same order for every question, or what?
Why don't you go first?
Me, I'll be happy to. We have done considerable amount of improvement to the district over the years since I've been involved. Our first bond was passed around 2000, and we did quite a bit of renovation at Oak Avenue and at the high school, mainly adding some science classrooms. And then we passed another bond in 2000, what was it, 11, I think it was, Measure S. And we've done some things. There's still more to be done. Like any other school district in the state of California or anywhere in the U.S., there's always opportunities for improvement. It's a matter of whether or not we can support that with the bond and get the appropriate funding. Um, so specifically with regard to the 400, 500 buildings, I think they're probably adequate for what we're doing today. I think it would be nice if we could do more, but I don't see that happening in the near future, to be very honest, because we are limited in terms of the funds that we have available to do that. With regard to an auditorium, I'm not sure where we would put that. We did have some kind of out there reaching discussions last year and talk maybe about trying to use the location where the district office is. But that's, all of that takes a lot of money and a lot of planning, and nothing's going to happen real soon. But there have been discussions about how we might do something. But it sort of got set on the back burner for the last many months because we got other higher priorities. But it would be nice. I just don't know if it's really feasible, to be very honest. We'll see.
I'll go next. I agree with Mr. Smith. I think that I would love for us to continue along the path of improving our sites and, the 400 and 500 building included. I'm also feeling like our, performing arts program has flourished, and I would love for them to have a place to display their talents and have it readily available at no extra expense, once built. I think we're just in a time right now where, I think the pandemic has impacted a lot of things, and the capital that's necessary to improve these locations and build an auditorium, it's significant. And so, right now, with some cuts and strains on budgets for all districts, we're kind of in a different mode right now, trying to get through distance learning, figure out where the shortfalls are in terms of budget, and see how we fare through that. And so, yeah, I agree with Matt. There's some priorities that are kind of taking precedence right now, but I always have that in the back of my mind. And if that opportunity were to come, that would be something that I would, want to bring up.
I agree with both Matt and Melissa. The bond is still being paid for it's still on our tax bills. And right now, I think we have a possibility of having funds cut by the state because of COVID. And I think we need to be very good stewards of the money that we have. And we might have to get by for right now. We'll make sure. I think the buildings have been renovated to a point, and will continue to be cared for. But I think we need to be very good stewards of our money and be very careful how we spend it right now. As for some kind of a performing arts auditorium. We were band geeks, we were band parents, and a performing arts building is just as important to those of us coming from band as the other areas. And that would be wonderful to have something in Temple City where we could have our own performances. But for right now, I think we need to be very good stewards of the district's money. And right now, that can be our dream in the future. But for right now, I think we need to be very, very careful.
I agree with the other three board members, or the other board members, and Mary also. I think that we've been very conservative with the money, and we have put in place the requirements to be able to get more money from the state for matching funds and that, and we're getting some of that, but we haven't decided on any buildings, I think, yet to spend the money on. I don't know if we got enough money to do all the work that everybody wants done instantaneously. We have to be very careful how much money we spend and how much money we get. The 3 years out, we're negative, our budget is negative, and so we need as much money as possible. Thank you.
So, just a follow-up question. Can one of you explain what a bond measure is so our listeners can understand?
Can you repeat the question again?
Definitely. So, a follow-up question. Can one of you explain what a bond measure is so our listeners can understand?
We asked the general public to go out and vote yes or no on a bond issue. We did an estimate of how much we needed, and then we kept cutting it back. The voters eventually wound up giving us the money for the bond issue, which is paid off by property tax increases. Uh, we don't get all the money at the beginning, unfortunately. We get it later from the state as we spend it. Okay.
And I'll just add to that, and just in really simple terms, bond money and bond issues are things that we have to pay back. So they actually do cost us, and our school community, it costs it. We do have to pay it back. So it's really expensive to live in California already, and the property taxes are very high, and so the bond measure is an additional cost to our taxpayers. And not that it's not worth it, it definitely is. We want to do whatever we can for our students, but I also think that the state has to take some responsibility and find different ways to support schools and make school a priority in their budget.
I'll chime in here. Going out for a bond is a very complicated process. As Member Nolenberg alluded to, what we do is we actually hire a company who comes and sits down with us, and we talk about what we want to do. And then they try to determine what the cost would be, rough estimate. Then they have to actually assess the value of the bond that we can pass. And we actually hit the max when we went out in 2011. And we actually just did some refinancing. We got some more money, over $1 million, which sounds like a lot of money, and it is. But when it comes to construction, that doesn't get you much. So we're pretty limited in terms of what we can do right now in terms of going out for bonds. And I'm not even sure how excited the community would be about it right now, given the pandemic and the state of the budget. But in all honesty, it's not. I don't see it happening in the next 5 years or even further out, maybe than that, where you can actually finally sit down and start looking at numbers and whatnot.
I see that there are so many families hurting right now, and that last bond, that was a huge bond, and it was a sizable increase on our tax bills each year. I think we'd have a very hard time. I agree with Matt. I think we'd have a very hard time passing any kind of a bond, another bond issue right now. there are too many people hurting from the pandemic, and they're just trying to get their families through this. And I think it would be foolhardy to try to pass something right now.
I think right now it is very difficult to pass any bond issue for any school district, not only us, but any other school district. And I don't think we are going to, it's not on the agenda, hadn't come up yet. I don't think we're going to tackle a school bond, another school bond issue for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for your explanations. So we're going to move to our next question. And basically, do you think that our schools should be more environmentally friendly? A lot of students at Temple City High School in particular have noticed a problem with food waste. So if you think that our schools should be more environmentally friendly, what steps would you also take to achieve that?
I'll be happy to address that. So I can't remember now if it was last year or the year before that, a group of students at Oak Avenue actually wanted to raise and address that same issue. And they came up with a change in the type of serving ware and whatnot that could be used that was much more environmentally friendly. In fact, they were recognized from another district too for doing that. And it was something they could actually leverage with other school districts. So there are certainly things that we can do. I was pleased to see that they took the initiative and to do that on their own without anybody guiding them to do that. And there's probably other things that we could do, but I hate to sound like a broken record. There are so many things that we're addressing right now and just trying to get back to as close to normal as we can, that many of these things can and should be addressed in time, but it's realistically, I just don't think these things are going to happen for a while. I'm sure that, I would love to hear ideas if anybody has them in terms of things they think we can do. I think that'd be a good start. I know there's two guys that clean up the ocean, and they sell wristbands for, I think it's like $5 or something like that. I actually contacted them when this other thing came up to see if that could be used as a fundraiser. Could a club in our district, could the kids at the Oak Avenue Middle School sell those wristbands for $5 and keep $1 for themselves? And they said that was something they were actually planning, but hadn't really done anything with it yet, and that time would tell. But that's been 12 to 18 months ago, and nothing's happened. And I think it's probably the same problem they're having with the pandemic is what's slowing them down.
We usually attack the problems whenever a teacher or a student is sick, like a La Rosa. We have a team of people in there evaluating the environment and see if there's any problems with it, and we'll fix those problems if we have to, if we have the money.
I think our students take the lead on a lot of things. Just looking at who's presenting this forum tonight, it was the students who stepped up to sponsor this forum. These are our leaders. These are our future leaders, and I feel confident that we have students who are concerned enough to take a lead to come up with some ideas on how to be more environmentally friendly. And come up with other ideas of how to make it possible. This is not a problem that's going to go away. It's going to be with us. And I think if some of our students take the lead like they did at Oak Avenue, we're going to hear you. You have a voice. And I encourage the students to take a lead and give us some ideas of how you could see it working at your school.
So a couple thoughts I had on the topic is, it definitely is, being environmentally friendly is an important thing for our future. I think some things that when we talk about food waste, is it possible for us to arrange some kind of a partnership with a place where we could donate, food that hasn't been touched. Is that possible so that there isn't as much food waste? The solar panels that we have at the high school, going more solar, I think, is another area we could look at if that's possible. Sometimes there's tax breaks on that. I don't know how it works, but solar energy, I think, is another another thing that should be like looked at and expanded. And then just green cleaning products. I know right now I understood that we were using green products, but as a result of the pandemic, there were some guidances related to the types of cleaning products that needed to be used to disinfect. And so we're remaining in compliance with those guidances, but in the long run, using cleaning products that are environmentally friendly is really important.
Thank you for your responses. So the fourth question is, how should TC schools respond to the national and local movement to end systemic racism?
So we've had some discussions along those lines, spent quite a bit of time. In fact, I know Member Espinoza has sat down with a group called Temple City for Change and talked about some of their concerns. I will say that uh, I believe most people in the district, including myself, felt like as things go, our district had been doing a pretty good job of addressing those issues and ensuring that we're being correct in the way we work with different groups and whatnot. And what we found is that we could do a better job. And so again, there's a lot of there's discussions ongoing about that. Um, and hopefully, when we get back together and we begin to be more of a normal school or district, um, we can continue to work on those things and develop opportunities to make sure that we are doing it in uh, communication, so that if somebody is feeling mistreated or frowned upon for no good reason other than the color of their skin or something like that, that it can be addressed correctly. But legally, when it comes to some of these things, if somebody reports, in particular, physical abuse or sexual harassment, we have to, by law, report those to the police authorities and address it. And I'm not sure if everybody always knew that, but there are things that can be done. And I see the 30-second flag, so I'll just cut it off there.
So I want to chime in here because I'm super passionate about this topic. Even in my day job involves investigating discrimination, harassment, and retaliation for any protected category in the employment setting. As a board member, I take it seriously. I am, as Board Member Smith said, I'm involved in the discussions related to the community group that came forward, who had done some research in our community and found testimonials of several people who graduated from our school district that felt that they experienced either sexual harassment or racism to some degree. And so I think that as a school district, there are things we can do. There's been talk in the media about ethnic studies, and there's people for and against it. I think if we could design an ethnic studies curriculum that was inclusive, it would be a great idea, because I think the younger you start, the more it impacts how you think of the world. I think another thing is looking at our own policies, which we have done, and figuring out ways to make it clear that we have a zero tolerance for that, and we have a safe method for people to come forward and report it. And I think education. I mean, some of the testimonials said that the person didn't know they were sexually harassed because they didn't know what that term meant until they got to college. That's just not right. I think we just need to educate not only our teachers and staff with professional development, but our students, so they're well aware and educated. So those are just some of the thoughts I had on that.
Also, we have board policies that support uh, uh, the proposition that all people are equal. And board member Lynn did a very good presentation on this subject a couple of months ago at the board meeting. The superintendent has also sent a letter out, and we do everything we can once somebody has enough information to investigate any complaint, whether it's from a teacher or a student or anybody else. We don't tolerate. We have a very low tolerance for people who are insensitive to race or any other types of discrimination. Thank you.
Whether it's our, excuse me, whether it's our students or our staff, when they come to school, when they come on our campuses, they should have an expectation of being free from harassment, free from bullying in any sort. I've seen some of my former students involved in the group that met with Mrs. Espinoza, and I was glad to see that they are taking the lead and getting that word out. One thing I think we need to do in the district is to celebrate the diversity in our district, and that includes racial or different nationalities. We need to celebrate how they make our district unique and how they are all important in our district. And I think we might have a ways to go. I think it's in the forefront right now that when we're talking about racial equality, and there needs to be some learning done by people at all different levels, at the student level, at the teaching level, at the district level, at the wherever it is in the district, and in our community too. They need to understand how this is affecting our students. And it's not just I saw some of the comments that came up from that group, and it wasn't just racial inequality. It was also some of them feeling bullied somewhat because of their sexual orientation. So that's another part that I think we need to look at. So people, when anyone comes on our campus, that they're feeling safe in being there, and they can go home and say, I was safe today. This was a safe place for me.
Thank you for your answers. And now to the next question. Should sports restart before school resumes to in-person classes?
I'll jump in first on this one. I think we're finding at the college level, some of them are starting back with sports, and they're finding an uptick in COVID cases again. I think if they follow protocols, it might be a way to start getting the students back in, but I think we have to be very, very careful because we're still at the point in California where we need social distancing. We still need masks when we're near each other, and I would go, if we're going to, I would go very, very slowly. I don't think we can put our basketball players in a bubble like they did with the NBA. I don't think we can put our athletes in a bubble like professional sports have. I would go very slowly with it. I know athletes want to get back out there, but we do still need to follow guidelines as to how we would do that. We need to have very strict protocols in place to do that.
I'll chime in next. I think as a board member, safety of students and staff is our top priority. I think we've been very good as a board in following the guidances of the county when it comes to thinking about return to school and our current situation with distance learning. And I think that path that we have been on, and that um, our thinking on the topic is because we have the safety of everybody involved as our top priority. So if there was a guidance that allowed for sports to begin, then obviously we would talk about that and collaboratively decide whether that's what we want to do and how we want to do it. um, I think that, like many things, when you're a board member, is you want to have the voices of the different stakeholders to chime in so that we can make the best decision possible. So
Yeah, I'll chime in next. I'd like to add that it's not. The problem is we're not an island, or we are an island if we don't have anybody else to play. So no matter when or we want to try to revisit athletics and sports, we have to make sure we have a league of other teams to compete against. And so we don't have that opportunity. I don't know. I haven't heard anything out of CIF or any of the youth sports organizations focused at the high school level, but we will need to open in conjunction with other schools in our area. And it's not just going to be us. Now we could probably start doing practicing, but I'd be concerned about rushing things, as Mary talked about, rushing things, getting out there too soon, and causing more pandemonium than getting the benefit out of sports programs. Um, so that would really be my caution. At the college level, these sports programs represent tremendous amount of money for the schools. They're revenue generators. That's not true with us, and I don't imagine it ever will be. Um, but I see the value in presenting programs for kids to compete and stay healthy, but I don't see the need to rush it until we get pandemic further behind us.
Yeah, we've been following the rules that the county Board of Education has laid down, and the state and the federal government, and we're going to continue to do that. There is a problem with sports in that most of the teams that play in empty stadiums, and we can't do that per se. Right now, we follow the protocols that are laid down, and as Mr. Smith said, we're not in any hurry to try to have people break any of the security rules or any of the pandemic rules that affect us. Thank you.
Thank you for all your responses. The next question is, in regards to added screen time, connection, and communication problems, how will you make distance learning easier on students and teachers?
I think by the time we figure that out, we'll have our kids back in classrooms almost. So I think the pandemic has definitely been a curse, but there is a little bit of good benefit, and that is that it's forced us to deploy one-on-one computing throughout the district. It's forced people out of their comfort zones and to begin communicating as we're doing right now. And that's something that probably could have and should have been started many years ago. The technology has been there for many years. There was just not the need or the interest. So when we do uh, go back to the more traditional environment, it's going to take a lot of planning to figure out how to even do that. It's not going to be, everybody show up in class tomorrow and it'll be classes as school as normal. It won't. It's not going to be that way. So um, I think maybe when we finally get back and settled in, what we really need to do is a relook at what we learned, what everybody got out of this situation, and try to find the things that are really good and keep those going. And the things that maybe were difficult, we either find solutions for any future need, or we take out of the system and don't address it. But I think we need to do a good sound post-mortem when all is said and done, and figure out what worked, what didn't, and what we can do differently. And only then will we really know how to make better use of the technology on a regular basis.
Right now, technology is costing us a lot of money, but it's worth it if all the children can learn, or all the students can learn uh, through the technology. But I'm not sure that we still need somebody to answer a question, like a teacher or something, that the students may raise during the distant learning process. Also, the distant learning process is, as Mr. Smith pointed out, has made it possible for us to go one-on-one with computers. Any student who doesn't have a computer or doesn't have a way of being able to get distant learning, we provide that at district office. Thank you.
So I think the question really was around how do we make it easier for students in this distance learning model? And I don't know that we can make it easier. What we tried to do as a board is set up the situation in distance learning using the best possible tools that are available. And the board voted on that, and that's the result was the use of Canvas and the other tools that are being used. But it doesn't. I truly believe that it really doesn't take the place of in-person learning. The social aspect of it, the participation in extracurriculars, all of that is, not what we're used to seeing. And so while we probably can't make things better from a distance learning perspective, I mean, it is the best it can be. We can kind of focus in on, what do we do about learning loss? What do we do about, when we can come back to the campus? How do we address learning loss? How do we address, the social aspects, the social emotional health of students who haven't been able to interact face to face with their friends and their teachers, and all of that is the focus that I would want to have. This is temporary. Hopefully it is temporary. I see that being distance learning being the temporary thing. And hey, if you like it, great. Then there's independent study. But if you want to be on campus, which most students do, I think that we can address the issues that have come out of the pandemic once we come back to the classroom.
I think during the pandemic, a lot of us are feeling kind of isolated and a little frustrated. We're becoming experts on Zoom, just like this. But we still don't have that connection you were talking about. I've talked to several teachers lately, and they're continuing to do a fantastic job of teaching their students. But they also have frustrations of how long it is taking them to prepare online lessons. So it's interesting for the students. And on top of that, they're also producing materials that the students can pick this, especially at the elementary levels, materials that the kids can pick up so they can do a science lesson through distance learning. And I think we need to respect and support the teachers who are going through this frustration of spending hours on hours on hours every night trying to prepare lessons that will work from a distance. And we also need to be respectful of how the families are feeling about it, because I'm sure some parents had no idea they were going to end up being teachers for their children for such a long time. And they need to feel comfortable to share their frustrations with us also, and then we need to come to a conclusion of how do we support parents at home, the students at home, the teachers who are doing this distance teaching, and just give them all the tools we can, all the encouragement, and hopefully we'll be out of this or sooner than later, we hope. But right now we need to continue to support everybody and make it as painless as we can.
I agree. We got to make it as painless as we can. If the students and the parents would inform the board of the problems they're facing, the board will tackle them, I think.
So, in regards to virtual learning, would you consider hybrid learning, which is basically virtual and in-person learning, in the future? And if so, how would you want to carry that out?
I'll start. Um, and I'm assuming that you're not meaning like the transition once we transition back, but I'll just touch on that to begin. The next step when guidances from the county change would be how do we start transitioning back to school? And I think that would have to be in some type of a hybrid model that we've talked about many times at board meetings. And so, mapping that out is something that we'll work with when we have the proper guidances. But I did get this question earlier on about a month ago. And I think that, for it's great that we have the technology to be able to do a distance learning model. I think it's great. We currently have a program, independent study program that allows, even before the pandemic, that allowed for students who wanted to, learn that way virtually, with like coming to the campus once a week or something like that. And I think that option will always be available. But our sweet spot, what's in our wheelhouse, is in-person learning, and that allows a lot of more opportunities to kind of develop the whole student. And so I'm a firm believer in the in-person learning, and so I think it'll always be available. We have the tools, but that being in person is our biggest draw.
So, so back in the, I'm thinking about this, back in the 90s, the ice finally broke on bonds. You asked that question earlier. And suddenly every school district in the state of California were going out for bonds. And among the things they talked about was technology and, and what, and how to deploy it and how to make the use of it. The internet was just becoming advanced and widespread. And there were a lot of questions, one of which I thought was interesting. An article I read many years ago, have to go try to find it again, but it was well written. It was, question is, if we really have technology and we can deploy it correctly, do we even need classrooms? And of course we do. But we've also come a long way since then. Here we are 20 years later, and now we're deploying technology as it should have been many years before. So I'm sorry, the question, I kind of got off track there. Can you repeat the question real quick?
Yeah, so it was basically, will you consider hybrid learning or a combination of virtual and in-person learning in the future?
Yeah, thank you. I believe it can happen. It can work. It's going to take a lot of work with our employee organizations in terms of figuring out how to do that. I think there's a time and place for everything, but not a time and place for everything. And I think so the hybrid is probably the most likely. I can imagine, see situations where you've got kids with special needs, and rather than have them come to the school site, maybe there are things you can do now, like we are in Zoom, in terms of helping them out, rather than make the physical contact. So it's probably got its place, probably has its place, but we'll have to be careful on how we address that.
I think, yes, I agree with Matt and Melissa. Excuse me. I think the best learning is happening in a classroom also. The students need that social interaction, not only with the teacher, but with their fellow students. I can very much see a hybrid program working. I know I understand that the district interviewed parents after the first part of distance learning in the spring as to whether they wanted to send their students back, and about half said, my child's not going back in a classroom until COVID is over. The other half said, take my children back like right now. This is like too much. Please take them back into the classroom. I think when our numbers improve and it is safe to get students back in the classroom, I know even at that point, we're still going to have families who are not going to want to send their children back into a classroom. They're going to continue to want to have a distance learning model. But we also have families who want to get their kids back into a classroom. And I think that would be a first step to getting us back to what I guess we would call a normal life. And get those kids back where I think that they want to be. But we have to also respect the families that say, I'm not going to take a chance on sending my student back into a building right now until the pandemic is completely gone.
Yes, I also agree with Matt Smith. I think the problem we have with distant learning is we don't have a teacher that can answer questions on the spot when somebody has a question. And I also think that distant learning also puts a burden on parents, because I know a couple of parents who gave up their jobs so they could stay home and do distant learning for their kids at the elementary level. Thank you.
Thank you. So, since the last board election, there's been a lot of global discussion about sexual and verbal harassment. Now, how should this conversation be reflected in the classroom since so many students have questions about it? And as a member, what actions are you going to take?
So we talked about some of that earlier. There are things that need to be done. It's clear that a lot of our students haven't understood, if they find themselves in an awkward situation, how to address it. And the CSU system just passed some new course offerings that would address these things, but that's in college. And we need to do something like that more local with our high school, and probably even Oak, and to a lesser degree, the elementary schools. I think there's more that needs to be done. I know we're addressing it. I know the superintendent's been meeting, as I said, with the group, Couple City for Change and others, to try to bring this topic to the surface a little bit better and understand what kids don't understand and what they need to know, so that we can make sure they're prepared and recognize bad situations when they see them coming, or before they see them, before they come.
Yeah, this topic is something that I've been working on with the group Temple City for Change. Some of the things that we talked about in terms of addressing the topic in the classroom, we talked about the testimonials that this group has found, and putting our alumni that have given their testimonials on video and share, so that they can share not only what they experienced, but how it made them feel. And so I think giving some education to the students is a critical piece. I think that doing it through the voice of other students is powerful. And I also think that I would support that, and I would encourage that, and I would want to see progress with regard to educating students. Professional development is another way to educate our staff on what we do when we hear complaints or concerns that are brought forward by students, taking it seriously, and having a safe way for them to report it. So those are some of the thoughts around addressing it in the classroom and what I would support. There's so much out there, and there is more work to be done here at the district. And so I look forward to being part of that work going forward if I'm granted that opportunity.
I see, excuse me, I see that at the secondary level, having sensitivity training, not only for the staff, but for the students also, so that they understand where some of the students that you've talked to, Melissa, are feeling, where those feelings are coming from. My background is in an elementary level. And even at that level, though, you can begin the seeds that would start the conversation, where you talk about respecting other people, because respect other people. They might be different than you, but respect them. And that's at a level that elementary kids can understand. As they go into the secondary divisions, they'll understand it at a higher level, and that's when we can introduce more training. And I think it's something that is right at the forefront of everybody's minds right now, and I think we need to be sensitive to that fact. And the problem will not go away, but if people are, like you had said, if people are aware of a comment they make that they didn't understand that that was insensitive, maybe they did and they said it anyway. But we would hope they would not be insensitive to others. Um, and I think training people to understand what to look for and how to deal with it would be very helpful.
You know, can I ask you guys a question? We used to, Carmen Ray and Sue Hook used to be some teachers at the high school, and they oversaw a program called peer counseling. And I haven't heard anything about that since I got back on the board. But that was something that was very popular at the time, with students being put in situations where they have to understand it's okay to talk about things, and they may be different, but they're unique. They're not strange. They're unique in terms of how they see things. Is it anything like that still going on at the high school?
It's been going on, but I'm not sure about this year. But I think it's still very popular at our school.
Also, on the subject of that you raised, I agree with the other board members, but I think that we should start at the elementary level for teaching people what is sensitive and what isn't sensitive, and what they say, and it has consequences. And we have a whole bunch of board policies, and also a superintendent letter out that reinforces our position, the board's position on this subject. Thank you.
So, next question. As a school board member, what would you do to support students' mental health, especially during distance learning?
I think a year, I think in my last year of teaching, um, an issue came up at the elementary level that more school counselors were needed. I was at Longden at the time, and the board at the time found funds to get another counselor, um, and that was a really big step. Um, I know issues come up at level where students are they're dealing with a lot of issues, and they become overwhelmed. And these are issues that we wouldn't have thought elementary age students would be dealing with. And I think we need to be very aware of the pressures that everybody is under right now. Um, children pick up on the frustrations that the parents are feeling right now. And they in turn are having frustrations of, this isn't working. I can't be on the computer all day, whatever. And we need to I think we need to have a way to access our counseling staff. We have a phenomenal counseling staff in this district. They're very, very strong, and make that available to any families, any students who feel they need to talk to somebody. They need to get their frustrations out. They need to have somebody just listen to them and maybe tell them it's okay, or if they need more help, help them find the connections to find more help.
So, as a district, you should never sit on your laurels, but as a district, in terms of our use and deployment of school counselors, we're ahead of most by far. It's been a big focus item since I got on the board the first time. Donna Clement, who was a longtime counselor at Oak Avenue, was really strategic in terms of working with the board to deploy more and more resources. In fact, just last year, we added, that's what Mary was talking about. We added a second counselor to Longden because the ratio should have been closer to 500 students to one, which is a huge number, and it should be smaller. But at Longden, we only had one counselor, so we added a second one. But so in terms of other districts, we're doing relatively well, but that's just the relative mark. We want to be the best, which means we want to do everything we can to provide the counselors and train them and have them have time to work with students, because counseling has always been kind of a pet project of mine. I definitely see the value in it in terms of addressing the emotional and even physical needs to some extent with our kids. So I support it, and I'm happy to look for ways to find funding for it to improve the program. It's important to me, but the list gets longer and longer, and you have finite resources. It's not always easy to do the things you want to do.
Yeah, I agree with Matt. I think we have had a focus on, trying to have the resources necessary to support our students. And, there's more to be done there. But I also want to give a shout out to, the administrators at every school site, because I think during distance learning, they have done everything possible to be engaged with their students and the families, and trying to identify, issues where, maybe more support is needed. And our teachers as well. I mean, it's difficult to do on Zoom, but I think they're very attuned to what is going on. Everybody's feeling the sadness, the frustration, and I have a house here with two teenage daughters, and I see, there are good days and bad days, and so I think that what we have done to supplement the experts, the counselors, and the counselors have been reaching out and trying to check in on their their kids at their school, the administrators too, and the teachers as well. And so as a team, I think that's the way you approach it, with the resources that you have. And I think our administrators and teachers have done an excellent job in trying to be attuned to how the kids are feeling and what's going on with the families.
I agree with Matt Smith. I think we need more counselors. Unfortunately, we don't have the money to pay for all the counselors we need, and so we just get by barely with the number of counselors we have. And we always look for, as board members, we always look for extra money so we can hire more counselors. But the issue still is what is money, and we just don't have it anymore. Thank you.
Thank you. So, question number 10 is, what measures are you planning on taking to keep students safe when we do reopen school?
I'll start. So some of the things that we talked about, I mean, again, we're going to follow the guidances of the county, first and foremost, for the safety of everybody. I think that we talked a little bit earlier about, transitioning in kind of a hybrid model where we don't have all students on campus at the same time. And it's kind of a transition back and forth. So many days you have a certain number of students on campuses, and the others are distance learning, and then it switches off. We've talked about that. I think that is a pretty great approach, a good approach. Um, Also, of course, the personal protective equipment, um, also called PPE. You might have heard that term. Ensuring that we have it. Um, and I also think that there's a lot of teachers who are, and actually there's a lot of students, teachers, families that have either, immune compromised people in their families or are immune compromised themselves. I think we have to really think about those people and how we work with them to have them feel safe in their work environment or their school environment, when we think about these plans. So those are just some of the measures we've talked about and some of the ideas that are out there.
This is not going to be a quick fix. It's not going to be a quick return to school. First, we need to have approval from the CDC, from the state, from the county to even think about coming back. I'm thinking about social distance, and in the classroom I was in before I retired, there's no way I could fit 30 students in there right now, socially distanced for a day. So we definitely would be looking at some kind of a hybrid situation to get the students back. But I think we need to go very slowly, ease our way into it, and be very cognizant of the fact that there are going to be some certain protocols that we have to follow, very strict protocols to safely bring everybody back. At my age, I guess I'm at the risk area, the risk age, I guess. Not that I have health issues, but I'm over 65, and I guess that puts me in the high risk category. But we also have teachers who they're a little older, like Melissa mentioned. We have students who have compromised health issues, and we need to be careful with them. We need to find a solution that they can be getting their education, whether it has to be distance for the next year or whatever. That's what we need to do. But we're going to be moving slowly. I see us moving extremely slow, probably slower than anybody wants us to go, to move back into the classroom setting.
I think we're going to go very, very slowly into going back to normal. But I think we need to have the students and the teachers face to face. Unfortunately, with the six foot rule, we have great problems, and we also have other problems too. It's been discussed, but I think we're going to leave it up to the superintendent to come up with a plan of how we're going to go back into the thing. Thank you.
And now we're going to move on. So, with the current status of what's happening right now with online learning, what do you think should be done to keep students to continue developing their interpersonal skills while they're behind their computer screens?
An interesting question.
That's a tough one. That is a tough one. I think we're kind of all stumped. I would welcome any thoughts that any community member, student has with regard to this, but I think that there are the booster groups. I know are doing some things with their folks, and trying to keep them engaged with each other. I think that same thing is happening with various classrooms and teachers, but I really don't think that you can collaborate as well and talk about the development of interpersonal skills strictly by Zoom. It's difficult, and so I don't. I feel badly that we're having to experience this, and for the students. But we're going to make the best of it, and we're going to at some point move forward, and get to back to, trying to develop the whole student, including that interpersonal piece.
I think when the students finally go back, I can speak as from the elementary level, that we're probably going to have a very large celebration that they get to see their friends again. Whereas that's not, they get to see their friends not on a screen. I feel like part of being in a classroom is not just learning, it's also interacting with each other. Whether you're interacting with the teacher, you're interacting with the other students, that's a big part of learning. And there's only so much interaction that we as adults can get on a Zoom situation. So trying to put students in that same situation, they're not getting that. I agree with Melissa. I think it's just, this is what our situation is right now. And perhaps we can encourage the families, have your students get together outside of the Zoom classroom situation so they can interact with each other. There's really not a solution right now. We're kind of stuck in this situation right now, and but we can certainly encourage them to interact somehow, maybe one-on-one with other students right now.
Earlier, in response to one of your questions, I said I think we need to do a pretty thorough job of review once we get back into the classroom, reviewing key learnings from this whole time with Zoom and distance learning. And I've seen, I don't want to call it chatter, but I've seen posts on Facebook and whatnot from some frustrated parents who said, my child is 5 years old. They can't spend more than 15 minutes looking at the screen without getting up and walking around. And it's probably going on all over the place. And so if we're going to continue to use distance learning in some aspect of education as we go forward, we need to understand better how we can work through these things. I'm thinking this kind of out there a little bit, but about 2 weeks ago, my wife did a fundraiser for Relay for Life, and she did bingo via Zoom with all her friends. And you know what? It was maybe an hour and a half, somewhere in there, maybe 2 hours. And I think everybody had a good time because we were all socializing. And I walked away from that thinking, gosh, I mean, the job of a teacher is to educate the students, but how do we build time into their curriculum or their day so that they can have recess for 15 minutes where they play a game? I don't know if that kind of thing happens, but I think we need to do more in the way of finding out what works and what doesn't, and trying to find tools to use. I'll accept that challenge.
I agree with Matt Smith. I think that a good teacher also brings out the best in the students, and we're looking at turning out students who can think for themselves. And I don't know if they learn that by Zoom or other things, other methods. But I think the issue will be discussed at a board meeting in either open or closed session pretty soon. Thank you.
Thank you. How will you protect Asian American students from the ongoing hate crimes and racism that they are facing due to COVID-19, considering that we live in such a predominantly Asian community?
I think this goes back to just the overall general zero tolerance for racism of any kind, or discrimination, harassment of any kind. I think we have to take it seriously, particularly for the Asian American students and families currently, because of the current situation, and I think the people of color also, is another area where we have to look at it. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is we have to have a zero tolerance. We have to take reports of that kind of behavior seriously and act swiftly to stop the behavior and protect the students. So, those are my thoughts on that topic.
You know, I'll kind of chime in here. I'm kind of in an interesting situation. I have two daughters-in-law, and both of them are Asian. One of them immigrated to the United States when she was about 8 years old from Taiwan, and the other immigrated to the United States when she was still in her mother's womb from Thailand. And we have open discussions. I won't say all the time, but from time to time about what it's like to be Asian and whatnot. I remember my one daughter-in-law in particular said, wasn't that long ago, maybe 2 months ago, and she actually wrote this on a post. She said for the first time um, that she could remember, she had felt she had been um, uh, discriminated against because she was Chinese or Asian and because of the COVID. So the good news is that was the first time she'd ever felt that way. The bad news is that it happened. And it's interesting. We live in a community. I believe the community makeup of the Asian population is something around 70%, and the population of students in the district from Asian our community is about 80%. So it's more. So I guess this is a long way of saying I don't know the answer to this question, but I will say I had an opportunity to chaperone uh, several trips with students from the high school, and again, most most of the population would have been Asian. And the first time I went, I was kind of surprised how everybody took care of everybody else and reached out. And if somebody had a quirk, it was fun to see what the quirk was. Not they weren't made fun of, but people would make it into a game. And I was very surprised and very pleased with it. And now with the issues that have come up more recently, I guess maybe I was living a little bit on the wrong side of the line and didn't really appreciate that there are issues that I haven't been aware of that just haven't bubbled up. So there's probably more we need to do. Sorry to be so long-winded.
I think in our classrooms, we always stress how important the different cultures are. When I was teaching, that was important to me. It was important for me to stress to my class that we celebrate all the different cultures within our classroom because that makes our classroom unique. And I think as a district and as a board, if we stress we stress the fact that we are celebrating every culture within our district, and an attack on one of those cultures is an attack on all the cultures. And we need to make it, there are a lot of board policies that deal with it, but we need to, when, from the board's perspective, let it be known that we celebrate the fact that I believe at Longden, when I was teaching there, I think we had 43 different cultures represented just at Longden. And we celebrated the fact that we had so many different cultures there. We need to celebrate the fact that we have such a diverse community, and that we will not tolerate um, discrimination against any of those different cultures, any of the different people. It needs to be just, this is our policy. We will not tolerate discrimination in any form.
I agree with Mary. I don't think we discriminate against anybody per se. We try not to uh, have the teachers in the middle, but a lot of times the protocol is, and we have instructions that says how to handle a complaint. Someone has a complaint, whether it's Asian or African or any other minority, Mexican and Spanish, any other type of complaints have to go through a procedure, and that procedure requires the teacher involvement along with the parents' involvement and the students' involvement. And I just encourage people to bring their complaints forward. so people can address them at the district office. Thank you.
Thank you, candidates, for answering all of our questions. Now we will be moving.
And modeling accountability and transparency. To close, I now bring a total of 17 years to the TCUS School Board, and I have undertaken extensive training for school board governance, including the California School Board Association Masters in Governance Program, their annual education conferences. They also have curriculum institutes that I've attended, and there's an organization called the School Services of California that works with us multiple times a year with regard to the governor's budget. So in closing, I'd just like to ask for your vote. Vote for me, Matt W. Smith. I bring experience, leadership, and integrity you can trust. And don't forget to check out my website, MATT4 at TCUSD.com. Thank you.
I'll go ahead. I'll keep it short. First, I'd like to again thank the students and the staff from Rampage. You are true leaders. I think our future is in good hands, and I appreciate you sponsoring and presenting our candidate forum tonight. I've heard it said that once an educator, always an educator, and I think that's very true. For half my life, the district provided me with an opportunity to have a profession I loved. Over the course of my career, I was privileged to teach or work with over 1,000 of Temple City's finest, the students. I thought of each of them as one of my kids, and I still do, especially when I run into them at Vaughn's, or I run into them getting a cup of coffee or something. I have to remember from all those students who they are, but they're still my kids. When I retired in 2018, I didn't stop being concerned about the students and staff. It still burns within me. If I am privileged to continue to serve this district as a member of the governing board, I will proudly be an advocate for our students, staff, and families. We must continue to be receptive to community concerns. After all, our families have entrusted us with their most precious treasures, their children. Their needs must be foremost in any decisions made by this board and district. I hope I'm given the opportunity to continue to give back to our students, staff, and families as a member of the Board of Education. So I'm asking you to vote for Mary Sneed on November 3rd. Thank you.
Uh, uh, to answer the question, can you repeat the question once again?
So we're just doing concluding statements right now, and you
Okay,
can talk about anything you
I
want.
understand it. Okay, I would like to continue on the board because I have experience on the board and met a lot of the problems head on. Most of the board decisions lately have been 5-0. So the whole board seems to be in consensus on the basic problems and how much money we have to spend so far. Also, I took the California School Board Association's master test or school and eventually passed it, and I got a master's degree in finance and some other stuff for the for the full for the future. I would look at the balanced budget, and I make sure that we have the money to be able to do the projects we have. Also, I would take a hard look at the social problems that we've created with different minorities. I think the students at Temple City High School have done a wonderful job. I think all the people have done a great job. Not only the students, but the faculty, the principals, the superintendent, and most of all, the parents have sacrificed more than anybody else, I think. So hopefully you'll vote for me. Thank you.
So I want to thank Rampage for the opportunity to participate tonight. I appreciate it very much. I'd like to close by saying that I truly care about what happens in this district. And I believe strongly that transparency and collaboration with all stakeholders is very critical in providing the students the best possible education. And I think my voting record and the discussions I have engaged in at board meetings reflects that. And I would encourage people to watch portions of the board meetings to, over the past year that are available online, so you can see how each board member engages in the discussions and contributes to your education and the decisions that need to be made. So please do that. I also talked already about why I think I'm qualified for the position. The training background, the work experience, the fact that I have kids in the district, my involvement outside as a parent. Some of the priorities I want to touch on, pandemic planning. How do we reopen schools? That's a big priority. Budget, 38th in the nation in per pupil spending. We can do better than that. So I would advocate for that. Inclusion and anti-racism is another area that I'm passionate about, and community collaboration. So I hope, thank you.